I found 15 Regency-era movies almost nobody talks about. Some of these are BBC dramas buried in the archives, others are recent releases overshadowed by Bridgerton. Let's see if you've even heard of half these picks. If you only know Natalie Dormer from Game of Thrones, this one's going to surprise you. It's a BBC period drama about Lady Seymour Worsley, an 18th century aristocrat whose marriage became a public scandal in Georgian England. Seymour, played by Dormer, is married to Sir Richard Worsley, a guy with a thing for watching his wife take lovers. He basically lets his friends sleep with her, and even spies on her through a keyhole. In real life, Seymour eventually left him for his best friend, and that kicked off a huge trial where Sir Richard sued him for adultery. The case becomes a sensation. Seymour shocks everyone in court, laying out how her husband was fine with her affairs. She lists at least 27 lovers. Instead of hanging her head, she fights back in the press and refuses to play the victim. That trial basically turned her into an early feminist icon. She even inspired Sheridan's play, School for Scandal. The film is based on Hallie Rubenhold's book and sticks pretty close to the facts. It's daring, sometimes hard to watch, but Dormer is great here. Some scenes are tough, especially the way the film shows Lady Worsley's humiliation and non-consensual encounters. The director actually handles it with sensitivity, and they never glamorize the abuse here. This one is a period drama about the real woman behind Clicquot champagne. Haley Bennett plays Barb, a young widow in Napoleonic France who takes over her late husband's struggling winery. She refuses to let it fail, invents a new kind of rosé champagne, and even smuggles her bottles past Napoleon's blockades to keep the business alive. Along the way, she faces just about every setback. Shipments lost at sea, almost going broke, and even a sexist lawsuit arguing a woman can't own a company. The movie is based on her actual biography, and it mostly sticks to Barb's real journey, even if it adds a bit of drama with a big courtroom scene. It's pretty classic for the genre, rags to riches, but with vineyards and corsets. It's polished, looks great, and Haley Bennett is solid as the lead. The movie got an 80% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. A little behind-the-scenes story, this film nearly didn't happen. Bennett produced as well as starred, and she said that budget cuts forced them to scale back, which is why most of the story plays out at the vineyard instead of all over France. It's not the most original period piece, but it's easy to watch and definitely worth checking out. Mike Newell's take on Great Expectations is a straightforward, Gothic-leaning adaptation of the Dickens novel. Jeremy Irvine plays Pip, an orphan who suddenly gets the chance to leave behind his life as a blacksmith's apprentice thanks to a mysterious benefactor. The movie follows all the main beats. There's Pip's connection to the escaped convict Magwitch, played by Ralph Fiennes, his obsession with Estella, and the ghostly Miss Havisham, played by Helena Bonham Carter. She personally insisted on wearing a decaying wedding dress and just one shoe, exactly as Dickens described. This version uses Dickens's revised ending. Pip and Estella meet again in the ruins of her estate, and instead of a tragic goodbye, it's more open-ended and hopeful. Writer David Nichols, he's a lifelong fan of the novel, said they wanted to make it work as a love story, but not make it sappy. The movie is faithful to the novel's core, but it cuts out side characters and subplots to fit into just over 2 hours. It is a little too earnest, and it doesn't really catch Dickens's comic bite, but the cast is strong throughout. Mary Shelley is a biopic that covers the early years of Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin Shelley, the teenager who wrote Frankenstein. Elle Fanning plays Mary, and the film dives right into her life with Percy Shelley. She runs off with him at 16. Percy's already married, so you get the scandal and the fallout right away. It doesn't shy away from the rough stuff. There's poverty, the loss of a child, and Percy's free love approach to life, which means a lot of heartbreak for Mary. The movie includes the famous summer at Lord Byron's place, where the whole ghost story challenge went down. That's where Frankenstein started. The film mostly sticks to what happened, but like most historical dramas, it moves some things around and smooths out the edges. For example, the timeline of Mary writing Frankenstein isn't quite right, and also the movie really leans into the idea that Percy was the main influence on her work, which has annoyed more than one expert. It kind of makes Mary seem passive, which is pretty far from the truth. Still, the movie gets a lot right. You see Mary editing Percy's poetry, living in the shadow of her famous mother, and dealing with betrayal after betrayal. In the end, Mary Shelley is respectful, but kind of plays it safe. It ironed out too many of the rough spots, and the movie didn't do much at the box office, about $2 million worldwide. Rotten Tomatoes has it at 41%. Elle Fanning is good as always, but the script plays it too straight. Looks good, well cast, just maybe not as alive as it should have been. Before Gentleman Jack ever hit TV, the BBC made The Secret Diaries. Maxine Peake stars as Anne Lister, a real-life landowner in 1800s Yorkshire who basically lived openly as a lesbian years before anyone else dared. The film is based right on her diaries, which she wrote in code. Those journals go into detail about her relationships with women, including her big love story with Mariana Belcom. That romance runs into a wall when Mariana marries for money. But Anne doesn't back down. She keeps living her life her way, even when it means going against everyone around her. The movie is about as close to the facts as you're ever going to get. The script pulls dialogue right from Anne's journals. There are a few small changes, of course. Some characters get merged, events get shifted. But it's a rare historical film that actually follows the record. You see Mariana's marriage, the secret meetups after, and eventually Anne's later relationship with Anne Walker. Maxine Peake does a solid job, and you can see why the BBC wanted her for this part. The only real problem is that the script just isn't as sharp as Lister's own life. It gets a bit wobbly, but it's still a fascinating watch. This one is a BBC film that does something most music movies never try. It focuses on just a single day in 1804, the first private performance of Beethoven's Third Symphony. It's more like a play than a traditional period movie. The whole thing unfolds in real time inside Prince Lobkowitz's palace, with Beethoven showing up and playing this brand new massive symphony for a room full of confused musicians and nobles. Instead of a whole life biopic, you get this one moment about something nobody's ever heard before. The film stays close to the real story. Beethoven originally dedicated the symphony to Napoleon, but after Napoleon crowned himself emperor, he was furious and changed his mind. The movie moves some moments around for drama, but most of the changes are just to keep things tight. Where it really shines is the music. The actors playing the orchestra are actual musicians performing live on set, and the attention to period detail is on another level. Ian Hart plays Beethoven as completely unpredictable and absolutely brilliant composer. If you only know him as Quirrell from Harry Potter, you'll see him do something totally different here. The whole film is a risk, letting a symphony play out almost in full. But it works because the tension is all in the reactions, the music, and the sense that something huge is happening. People call this one of the best movies about music ever, and it's easy to see why. Interlude in Prague is a historical thriller that spins a whole fictional story around Mozart's real-life visit to Prague in 1787. Mozart comes to town, starts working on Don Giovanni, and gets pulled into this love triangle with a young soprano named Zuzanna. Meanwhile, there's a villain, Baron Saloka, played by James Purefoy. He's not a real historical figure, just a pure creation for the movie. He's creepy, abusive, and the whole plot turns into Mozart trying to protect Zuzanna while writing the opera. Most of this is just made up. There's no record that Mozart ever got mixed up in a murder or a scandal in Prague. He was mostly just working, being celebrated, and having a creatively productive time. But the film mixes real and fake. You get Mozart's actual personality, his money problems, the energy of Prague at the time. They filmed some scenes in the Real Estates Theater, where Don Giovanni actually premiered. Even brought in a coach to teach the cast how to move and bow like it's 1787. But as soon as you see the invented villain and the big melodrama, It's clear that this is basically Mozart fan fiction. It's got the right look. Costumes and sets are all beautiful. But the story is a what-if rather than a real biography. If you want a Regency soap opera with classical music and some great shots of Prague, it delivers. Just don't expect historical accuracy. Miss Austen Regrets is a BBC drama that's all about Jane Austen's later years, based a lot on her letters. Olivia Williams plays Jane, who's in her 40s here. The movie's set right at the end of her life, as she's giving advice on love to her niece Fanny Knight. A lot of the story comes straight from real letters. It all starts with Jane accepting a marriage proposal in 1802, then breaking it off the next morning. And then the movie spends a lot of time with her looking back, wondering if she made the right call by staying single. You get these moments with her sister Cassandra and with Fanny, and the dialogue actually pulls lines directly from Austen's surviving letters. There's even a storyline with Brooke Bridges, a sort of what-if old flame who shows up later in her life. This is a character that's really a blend of a few men from Austen's past. The movie never goes full fantasy, like with Interlude in Prague, but it does give Jane a more emotional journey than what's strictly documented. Olivia Williams is the best thing about this. She's got Austen's sharpness, that irony, but also the vulnerability. The film's not sappy, and it doesn't try to oversimplify the question of regret. Great production, great cast. If you like Austen, it's worth your time. Peterloo is Mike Leigh doing a full-on historical epic about the Peterloo massacre in Manchester, 1819. He'd apparently wanted to make this movie for years, and with Amazon and the British Film Institute funding him, he just went all out on accuracy. The film follows all sorts of characters, working-class families, radical speakers, government officials, all leading up to the giant rally at St. Peter's Field. What's unique here is Leigh's approach. There are no made-up subplots, no invented main characters, and no forced drama. Almost all the speeches and crowd scenes are lifted straight from historical records, memoirs, and newspapers. You actually hear parts of radical speaker Henry Hunt's real speeches, and the dialogue from the authorities is exactly what they said at the time. The climax with the cavalry charging into the crowd is brutal, but all of it lines up with historical accounts, even down to showing specific victims. Visually, the movie nails it. Costumes, sets, even the way troops are arranged, everything is 1819 down to the last detail. Leigh had over 100 speaking roles, thousands of extras in the big rally scene. The result is basically a docudrama. Historians loved it, but it can be heavy and a little tough to follow. This is one of those Regency rom-coms with a modern update, like Bridgerton, but with a little more Jane Austen in the mix. It's based on the novel by Suzanne Allen, and she wrote the screenplay herself. So the movie actually sticks pretty close to the book, especially with the dialogue and all the plot twists. The setup is classic drawing room farce. Mr. Jeremy Malcolm is looking for the perfect wife, and he's got an actual checklist for her. After a failed date where Julia doesn't meet his impossible standards, she decides to get even. She ropes in her friend Selina, who pretends to be Malcolm's ideal woman, just to turn the tables and eventually reject him herself. And of course, somewhere in the middle of the setup, real feelings start to develop, which makes everything more complicated. What stands out is that the movie doesn't pretend to be real Regency England. The cast is diverse. Mr. Malcolm is black, Selina is Indian, and there's no commentary about it. It's just the world of the film. It's not about social realism, it's more like escapist fantasy. The tone bounces between sharp modern jokes and classic period manners. And it all comes together pretty well, even if it isn't doing anything groundbreaking. It's a nice time if you like Austen-style stories and want something light that doesn't take itself too seriously. The 2007 ITV version of Mansfield Park is a short take on Austen's novel, and probably the most controversial adaptation out there. Billie Piper plays Fanny Price, but this is not the quiet, shy Fanny you get in the book. Here, she's running around the estate, riding a pony, even flirting in a way Austen's version never would. The movie compresses everything down to 90 minutes, so a lot of the big moments from the novel just get brushed past. The lovers' vows play, which is a huge deal in the book, barely registers, and they skip the entire Portsmouth sequence where Fanny goes back to her family. That move basically drops all of Austen's commentary on money, class, and character. What you get instead is a much breezier period drama with a more outgoing lead. If you want something faithful to the book, this isn't it, of course. But at least Billie Piper is fun to watch, and the whole thing works as a kind of quick costume romance. Just don't watch it expecting real Austen. Onegin is the Fiennes family take on Pushkin's Onegin, done in English. Martha Fiennes directed, Ralph Fiennes stars as Onegin, and their brother Magnus did the score. The movie follows the book pretty closely in terms of plot. Onegin is a bored St. Petersburg aristocrat who ends up out in the country, befriends the poet Lenski, and meets Tatiana, played by Liv Tyler. Tatiana falls for him, writes the big love letter, but he turns her down. Years later, he tries to win her back, but she's married and won't leave her husband, and Onegin is left with nothing but regret. Visually, the film looks great. They actually filmed it in Russia, at real palaces and out in the snow. The Fiennes team even brought in Russian experts to get the details right. They didn't try for Russian accents. Everyone just uses their own voice, which honestly works better than the alternative. What the movie doesn't capture is Pushkin's humor and the playful tone of the poem. Instead, it's all done as a straight romantic tragedy. It's respectful, it's well made, just a little on the cold side, especially if you're used to the novel's more lively, satirical voice. But for a serious adaptation with great production value, it holds up. This is one of those period dramas that barely anyone remembers now, which is a shame, because it's actually a joy to watch. The movie gives you a fictional take on the last year of Beethoven's life. It's all told through the eyes of Anna, a young music student who starts working for him. Diane Kruger plays Anna, Ed Harris is Beethoven, and you've also got Matthew Good and a bunch more in the cast. It's set in Vienna, 1824, and the whole movie just looks beautiful. Candlelit, sepia, the kind of visuals you'd expect from Agnieszka Holland as director. The score is packed with Beethoven's own music, so you just get one highlight after another. Ed Harris plays Beethoven as deaf, grumpy, and pretty much impossible to live with. It's not a strict biography. They take a lot of liberties with the real history. But it's the kind of film that explains why Beethoven is such a fascinating figure, even if some of it's made up. Gorgeous movie, great cast, pure pleasure if you're in the mood for something classical. There are a lot of versions of Persuasion out there, but this one from 2007 with Sally Hawkins and Rupert Penry Jones is my pick for the most watchable. Sally Hawkins plays Anne Elliot, who's just perfect for the role. She's totally sympathetic, relatable, and you really get drawn into her story. She actually went deep prepping for the part, read all of Austen's books again, dug into letters and biographies, and it shows on screen. The plot is classic Austen. Anne and Frederick fell in love. Her family said no, years go by, and now he's back. Now a Royal Navy captain, and Anne's family is struggling. The twist with this adaptation is it's modern in its style, short in length, and Sally Hawkins sometimes breaks the fourth wall. This was a bold choice for a British period piece. For me, it works, because it helps you connect with Anne more than in any other version. The movie's a little shorter than it probably should be, but the pace keeps things tight, and the cast is great here. Northanger Abbey, from the same wave of ITV Austen adaptations, has Felicity Jones as Catherine Morland. The script's by Andrew Davies, who always knows how to keep things sharp and clever. The whole movie's witty, charming, and just a little bit modern, but it never loses what makes the book special. Felicity Jones really sells Catherine's innocence, and Carey Mulligan as Isabella Thorpe is spot on, subtle and effective. Even Henry Tilney is more likable here than he sometimes comes across in the book. Honestly, it makes you want to pick up Austen's original right after watching. My only real complaint is with the dream sequences. Andrew Davies went a little overboard with the sexualizing and gothic fantasy stuff. He said the novel's gothic elements inspired him to take it there, but it pulls you out of the Austen mood. There was no need for that. It's a modern TV thing. trying to make everything relevant by adding stuff nobody asked for. Still, shot on location in Ireland, it looks fantastic, the cast is great, and the spirit of the story survives.